So this is Decent Way the People News. Alright, this video is without prejudice and without recourse. Alright, not waiving any of my rights, none whatsoever. Anything I say or do is not illegal. That's why, because I'm not an attorney, that's why. However, I'm going to voice my opinion, and my opinion only. Okay? If I say anything or do anything at the particular time. Which, in this video, I may not need to. However, accidents happen. Alright, y'all. This video is from official misconduct. Check her stories out, alright? And this is her stories dealing with what we call CPS here in Texas, and officers and all that kind of stuff, alright? But it's kind of more, I'm doing this as an intro thing because it's really true and accurate, to be honest. But that's my opinion. I'm not giving legal advice. Alright? Alright, let's check this out, y'all.
Hey everyone, I have a question for you. How many of you would call 911 and ask for them to send you a dumb alcoholic abuser to come help you with your emergency? What? No one? Well, unfortunately for us, statistically speaking, that is exactly what we get approximately 40% of the time. Crazy, right? Well, let's dive on in and look at the statistics I was able to find. That way you can see how I was able to come up with the question that I just asked you. During my research, I had a really hard time finding up-to-date statistics on police and domestic violence in their homes. The reason for that is simple. The victims don't report it out of fear, and domestic abuse among fellow officers is considered an open secret, meaning they don't tell on their fellow thin blue line gang brothers because they all follow a code of silence. When the subject of abuse is brought up, many officers try to cop-splain abuse by blaming it on their highly stressful job. But more honest officers will tell you it's all about control. Controlling people and chaotic environments attracts individuals with an abusive mentality. The more power these officers have, the more they like to exert it on others.
Night in February 2019, Suzanne says Megan took her husband's gun to protect herself.
When she heard him coming towards her, she went towards the door with the gun to keep him away. And she said, the next thing I know, I'm on the floor and I'm shot.
Megan's arm was shattered. The police who responded were McIntosh's colleagues on the local force, so Alabama's state law enforcement agency took over, seizing the gun as evidence.
We went and got the restraining order. She got the restraining order.
But after Megan moved into her own apartment later in 2019, the Alabama law enforcement agency returned Jason McIntosh's gun to him. 16 days later, he shot and killed Megan.
Our worst fears came true. You know.
A spokesperson for the Alabama law enforcement agency told NBC News they had no legal justification to keep the weapon, stating the restraining order Megan had did not restrict Mr. McIntosh's access to firearms. But Alabama law specifically says no person who is subject to a valid protection order for domestic abuse shall own a firearm or have one in his or her possession or under his or her control.
Breaking news out of Jackson County. The Alabama law enforcement agency says it's investigating after a Scottsboro police officer allegedly shot his estranged wife and later turned the gun on himself. Officials say Stephen Miller, pictured on your screen right now, allegedly shot his wife at a home on Berry Road in Scottsboro. Investigators say Miller was found dead at the residence from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Miller was on leave at the time of the incident. The Alabama law enforcement agency says they began their investigation at the request of Scottsboro Police Chief Ron Latimer and will turn the findings over to the Jackson County District Attorney's Office once the investigation is complete. At this time, officials have not released any information on the condition of Miller's wife. News 19 will continue to push for answers on this story and bring you the very latest on air and online.
On Shipman, it was an unimaginable crime that left 4 young children without parents. Their aunt pursued the only justice possible for them in the courts, and today, 4 years later, that legal battle finally came to an end.
The Utica police officer Joseph Longo stabbed his wife, then himself, to death in the Deerfield home they'd shared back in 2009. Well, this week, the city and Kristen Palumbo Longo's family reached a $2 million settlement in the family's civil suit 3 weeks before this case was set to go to trial. It is your top story. Jolene Ferris is in the newsroom with the details from court. It seemed almost anticlimactic for this gut-wrenching 4-year-old case to come to its end in a proceeding that took only a few moments in federal court in downtown Utica today. The older Longo children joined their aunt and uncle in federal court today as the $2 million settlement in this case was placed on the record, the final official step. It's a financial settlement only and does not include any policy changes in how the Utica Police Department handles domestic violence and mental health issues among its members. And the family feels strongly that if UPD had better handled these issues with Longo, their mother, sister, and daughter would still be here.
It has been found that 40% of law enforcement families experience domestic abuse, making it 2 to 4 times more common. These stats go hand in hand with the fact that children who are abused are more likely to become adults who abuse, between 30 and 40% to be exact. I found this part very interesting. It was stated that nurses can identify children that will become violent offenders by the age of 3. These children are 10 times more aggressive than most children. And just to throw these in before we move on, the presence of a gun increases the risk of homicide by 500%, and 19% of domestic violence involves a weapon. Considering all of this, it is no surprise at all that 75% of law enforcement marriages end in divorce. Next, I want to talk about the mental health of law enforcement officers. 25% are alcohol dependent. 1 in 4 officers screened for depression, anxiety, PTSD, and suicide showed symptoms. But only 20% of the affected officers sought treatment for those mental disorders, while 12% of them actually had a lifetime mental health problem. During 2021, there were 632 law enforcement officer deaths across the nation. And of those, nearly 25% were self-inflicted. If you take out the number of COVID-related deaths, suicide would account for 49% of law enforcement deaths. While doing my research, I ran across an article about Robert Jordan. He was deemed too smart for the police force because he scored too high on his intelligence test and lost his appeal against New York in 2000. So in case you were wondering, the police department can turn down recruits with too high of an IQ. All of these statistics made me wonder, what would our statistics look like if we did hire more educated law enforcement officers? Officers would be 40% less likely to use force and 30% less likely to fire their weapons in the line of duty. They would also be 40% less likely to lose their job due to misconduct. Everything that we have discussed today kind of makes me think that our government is hiring individuals to meet a certain standard that is stated in qualified immunity. Let's look at the definition of qualified immunity. Immunity from lawsuits that is granted to public officials, such as police officers, for acts that violate someone's civil rights if it can be shown that the acts do not violate clearly established statutory or constitutional rights of which a reasonable person would be aware. You and I both can come to a reasonable conclusion that a mentally ill alcoholic abuser who is only of average intelligence would probably not meet this standard. Could it be that our law enforcement officers are handpicked by our government to act as the militia to force us to comply, and that is why they refuse to hire more highly educated officers? They don't want them to know that they are violating our rights and doing things wrong.
I wanna be a slave, I wanna be a master. I wanna make your heartbeat run like roller coaster. I wanna be a good boy, I wanna be a gangster. Cause you could be the beauty and I could be the monster.
Alright, y'all. Y'all decide. Alright? This way the people news. Till next time. Bye, y'all.